Hi everyone! Thanks for joining me again. Today I'm going to talk about half of my favorite books from 2019. Yes, just half. I'll explain more later. Since March-ish of 2018, I've been a member of Goodreads. It's an app slash website where you can join, and its primary purpose is to help you find books that you would like to read. It has a lot more features than that, but I think I'm going to do a separate video on Goodreads anyway. The whole point of my telling you about Goodreads is to say that this app is how I keep track of what I read. When you join, and then again at the beginning of each year, Goodreads invites you to create a reading challenge for yourself. In 2018, I set my goal for the year at 40 books. I joined late, and honestly, I had no idea how much I read annually because I'd never kept track before. I ended up reading 55 books from March to December of 2018. So, when January 2019 rolled around, I figured I'd set my goal at 75. I ended up reading 98 books last year. But of course, remember that reading isn't just my hobby. Of course it is. It's also sort of my job at this point. I need to read as much young adult literature as I can so I know what to recommend to you guys. Of those 98 books that I read, I found 12 that I was willing to classify as one of my year's favorites. So Goodreads also has a feature that allows you to rate and keep track of your favorites. You can make shelves, basically, virtual bookshelves. That's not to say that I didn't like the other 86. I definitely did, but these 12 had something a little extra special to them. Basically, I find that if I immediately want to tell a bunch of people about a book I just read, it qualifies as a favorite. Favorites give you book hangovers. And for me, that just means that after I finish the book, I find myself thinking about it still. Like I can't get enough and I want to experience it again. Okay, so I think that's enough explanation. You're probably already bored. I'm going to go through my list of 12 favorites of 2019 in the order that I read them. I am only going to give you a synopsis of the books that are actually in our library for this video. And for this video, I'm only going to show you the first 6 because otherwise the video would be like 30 minutes long and I'm not going to do that to you or me. So here we go. Number 1 is The Wicked King by Holly Black. This book is second in the Folk of the Air series. The first book is called The Cruel Prince, and it was definitely in my favorites for 2018. This series is wildly popular in our library. I had to buy extras of every installment of this series because there was always a wait list. So rather than give you a summary of book 2 in the series, I'll give you a short introduction to the whole thing. No spoilers, I promise. The Folk of the Air series really, basically, is about a human girl named Jude, her twin sister, and her half-human, half-fae older sister. When Jude is really young, both of her parents are killed, and she and her sisters end up going to the Fae world to live with her older half-fae sister's father. Living in the Fae world is extremely dangerous for humans, so her new life forces Jude to become really tough, both mentally and physically. By the time Jude is 17, the best and worst part of her daily routine is attending school. Now, I'm using the term school really loosely here. There are no lockers or even classrooms. School happens outside, and it can be swordsmanship or studying the stars or some other fairy type subject. Anyway, Jude is really intelligent and likes learning, but she hates being tormented, practically tortured, by the Fae in her classes. Remember, she and her sister are the only 2 humans living in this world, or so she thinks. Because Jude is more threatening than her sister, she has had it way worse. Her biggest tormentor is a Fae prince named Crawdad. At one point, at one of the Fae nobility's notorious parties, Jude ends up seeing a softer side of Crawdad, and all kinds of conflict and touches of love story ensue. The Folk of the Air series is one of the best that I've read in a long time, and I highly, highly recommend it. Okay. Book number 2 is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This book is not young adult, and it is not in our library, so I'm not going to book talk it. It's definitely more romance, but I found that it didn't stick to the typical romance formula. It surprised me, and it was really cute. So, okay, I'm done with that one. Number 3 is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This book was part of Reese Witherspoon's book club, so it got a lot of media attention in 2019, but it deserved every bit of it. Where the Crawdads Sing is actually not young adult fiction. It is adult, but it definitely deserves to be in our library, which is why I bought it and put it in there. At times, it reminded me of Harper Lee, which is one of my, Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, which is one of my top 5 all-time favorite books. It also had a touch of Burying the Honeysuckle Girls to it, if any of you have read that. If you haven't read either of those, here's a better description. Where the Crawdads Sing is set in the past, starting in the 1950s and continuing through the 1970s and eventually even to the present. I think that most of the book is set in the 60s. Kaya is the protagonist of the story, and she is born in the poorest family you've probably ever heard of. They live in the swamp, they don't have electricity or running water. She's eventually abandoned by everyone she's ever known, especially loved, and ends up at a very, very young age having to figure out how to survive in the swamp on her own. Despite her lack of formal education, Kaya is very smart and is she's like an unconventional scientist. As she travels through the bayou, both surviving and learning, she meets people who play really important parts in her life. But she's also looked at as sort of a witch. People think she's weird because she lives alone and she's so isolated. Basically, she's just different, and people don't handle different well. Surprise, surprise, still don't. When Kaya is in her early 20s, I think, one of her very few acquaintances is found dead close to her swamp, and the police look at Kaya as their primary suspect. Where the Crawdads Sing is incredibly sad at parts. It's inspiring, it's infuriating. God, it's just so good. You would not regret reading this one. Number 4 on my list of 2019 favorites is Sherman Alexie's The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. I read this book because it was one of the most frequently banned or challenged books in the US. It is young adult, and it is so funny. Honestly, I don't see any reason why it should be challenged in a high school library. There are cuss words, but have you walked down the hallway between classes? The protagonist of The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian is Junior, who, as you might have guessed, is Native American. What's unique about Junior and what makes him a part-time Indian is that he leaves his reservation to attend a mostly white, not as poverty-stricken high school because he's smart and he desperately wants to be able to leave the reservation and be successful. Basically, the book just chronicles Junior's hilarious misadventures in the world outside the res. That's not to say the book is nothing but jokes. It also deals with some pretty serious adult-style conflicts like alcohol addiction and depression. I love a book that can make me laugh out loud and deliver a powerful message simultaneously. The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian is an excellent book. You should read it. Number 5 on my list is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, which I actually have at home with me right now. This one is young adult, even though it could be classified as a love story also. It was so different from the typical normal teenage love story book, though. Typical normal. Here's why. Kath, the main character, is a huge dork, and I say that with so much love. She is in college. She's an excellent student. She also writes fan fiction for a story really similar to Harry Potter. Like, she'd rather stay in her dorm and write fan fiction than go to college parties or hang out with friends or even hang out with the hot guy who is 100% interested in her. But of course, she's completely oblivious. The cute twist to this book is that Kath's fan fiction is incredibly popular on the internet. She has her own business where she sells merch for her fanfic. Kath writes anonymously, so nobody really knows who she is. She finds out that the cute guy, the one who's 100% interested in her, is a fan of her work, and she already sort of knew him online through the message boards. Kath is so dorky and cute and crazily awkward that I could not stop reading this book. I wanted to know if she would ever get it together long enough to put on her big girl pants and tell a cute guy, can you tell that I forgot his name, who she really was? And would she give him a chance? So good. Okay, so last one for today is number 6, Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson. This book is actually the first, I think, book read that the book club did this school year, 2019-2020. This book isn't cute. It isn't funny. It does not give you the warm and fuzzies. It is powerful. It definitely feels like the Me Too movement, but Speak was published in 1999. It did not feel like it was written 20 years ago because the conflicts that the protagonist, Melinda, encounters are so relevant to today. I'll try to give you a preview without giving too much away. Melinda is a freshman or sophomore. Honestly, I can't remember exactly now. And for some reason that is completely unknown to you, the reader, her friends have disowned her. Some of them spread lies and vicious rumors. Some of them just ignore her. If you're familiar with the symptoms of depression, it becomes obvious real fast that Melinda is suffering from this malady. Speak keeps you reading because as the reader, you really want to figure out why people are treating Melinda the way they are. You want to know why Melinda feels shame and guilt, almost like she deserves the treatment, even though no one in the world could deserve to be treated like she is in this book. This book made me cry, but again, it was probably the most meaningful and powerful book I read in all of 2019. I feel like I just book talked 5 books in one video. Sorry. Or you're welcome. I don't know. Anyway, I hope it wasn't too boring. And stay tuned for part 2. Bye, guys.